It's not just the weather that's heating up this weekend, so is the real estate market. That's right. House prices have made a sharp U-turn and are back on the rise, right along with a drastic jump in sales activity. I mean, of course they are. It's Vancouver. Now, are we on the precipice of the next raging bull market here in the Lower Mainland, or is this just a typical spring bump? Let's break it all down by taking a closer look at the numbers. Hello everyone and welcome to the March 2024 edition of our Greater Vancouver Market Update, your source for unbiased, unspun analysis of the housing market here in the Lower Mainland. If you enjoyed this content, please let the algorithm know. Hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. All right, let's start off by going over last month's stats, beginning with our sales figures, which came in at 2,070 transactions for the month of February. Now, this equates to a very healthy 45.1% jump from the previous month. Mind you, January was a particularly lackluster month for sales volume, and despite the 45% month-over-month increase, February sales were still over 23% below the 10-year average for the month. So, although anecdotally things have heated up by contrast, I don't think you can really classify it as raging just yet. Listings, as is often the case in our market, have not been able to keep up, with the total number of properties listed on the MLS sitting at 9,634. This works out to an 11.6% increase over January of this year. Now, what's interesting about our inventory figures is that new listings last month were basically bang on with what we are historically used to seeing in this market for the month of February, coming in at just 0.2% below the 10-year average. So with our sales vastly outpacing listings, our months of inventory, also known as the absorption rate, shot down from 6 MOI in January to 4.7 months this past month. Again, anything between 4 to 6 months of inventory is considered a balanced market, and with our sales figures still sitting 23% below the 10-year average, it goes to show just how tight our housing market has been here over the last decade. But with the sales to inventory ratio tightening, this has pushed prices back in the upward direction after 6 consecutive months of declines, jumping to 1.18 million, a nearly 2% increase from January. Now, there's no doubt about the fact that a buzz has returned to the market, but this stat is a little bit surprising to me, to be honest. A 2% jump in 1 month is very significant. I mean, think about it. If this pace were to continue, prices could be up by 10% by the summer. What are the chances of rates dropping if that happens? Yeah, exactly. So we really need to be careful what we wish for here. But like a lot of things in this world, people are driven by sentiment when it comes to real estate, and a price graph that takes a sharp angle trajectory like this, combined with some sunny weather, is sure to stimulate consumer confidence. All right, that's it for the stats portion of our update. If you're watching this on Instagram or Facebook, flip over to our YouTube channel to catch the editorial segment called Boots on the Ground, which starts now.
These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do.
As I always say, stats are great, but just like analytics in sports, it's best to use them in conjunction with the eye test. So, what are we actually seeing out there? Well, to start, the sales numbers don't lie. Buyers are definitely back. There's been a palpable increase in activity from both buyers and sellers. On the buyer side, though, a lot of this has been fueled by the drastic decrease in fixed mortgage rates. You see, what we hear about on the news are announcements from the Bank of Canada regarding their policy interest rate, often called the overnight rate. Now, this rate is directly tied to variable rate mortgages and lines of credit, but it does not control fixed mortgage rates. Fixed rates are largely controlled by the bond market, and bond yields have dropped considerably over the last 3 months or so. Although this doesn't affect people with existing fixed rate mortgages, it does make a huge difference for folks getting their first mortgage or renewing an existing one. Back in November, fixed rates were sitting at around 6.25%. I had a call from one of our mortgage brokers earlier this week telling me that he can get a 5-year fixed right now for 4.89. This is a huge margin, and it makes a huge difference on how much folks can qualify for. As for sellers, Even though it really wasn't reflected in the February stats, I also feel like there's a lot more activity on this side of the equation. I just kind of get the feeling that buyers and sellers aren't quite lined up with their timing just yet. Keep in mind, we are talking about February numbers. It's still rainy and gloomy, and properties simply don't show as well in the winter. Just from what we are seeing in our own pipeline, we have a large number of clients who have already contacted us about making a move later this year, but are simply a few months out, waiting for that patio to look just right. So, although I think sales volume will continue to rise over the next few months, I wouldn't be surprised if listings see a significant uptick as well. Look, by no means do I think we're going to be flooded with too much inventory, but a healthy balance of both buyers and sellers sure would be a welcome sight. The other interesting thing that we have been seeing over the last month or so is an above average number of subject to sale deals happening. And to me, this is a sign of a nice and healthy market. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, a subject to sale deal is when a buyer writes on a property prior to having their current home sold, even on paper. They enter into a purchase agreement to buy their next home, and it's subject to them selling their existing residence. We almost never see this in hot markets, and although it's a little bit more common in slow markets, it's still pretty rare because even in a slow market, a seller does not want their property tied up to a buyer that's having trouble selling their own home. Yes, there are contractual mechanisms such as bump clauses that can mitigate this to a certain extent, but the fact of the matter is, if you have an accepted offer that is subject to sale, you're going to get a significantly lower number of showings. But in a balanced market like the one we're seeing right now, sellers aren't necessarily getting multiple offers thrown their way, yet they're confident enough to think that the buyer's home will sell in a reasonable amount of time. We have personally had 2 sets of clients involved in these in the last 2 weeks, and when calling to check on the availability of other homes for our buyers, we've heard accepted offers subject to sale on a handful of occasions. This is really the safest approach for anyone looking to upsize, and it's relatively rare to see in our market because we have such drastic swings from one end of the pendulum to the other. So if you're someone that's fairly risk adverse and wants to make a move, this is one of those rare times where you could pull off a move using a subject to sale approach. And the final thing I want to touch on is something that I covered in the stats portion of the update, and that's this 1.9% month over month increase in prices in the region, according to our board. As I mentioned earlier, this figure surprises me. Although prices have definitely stabilized and in some segments have started moving up, a 2% increase is a lot in a single month. It's like 50 to 100K over asking and multiple offers all the time, kind of a lot. I'm just not seeing it to that extent, especially since we are sitting comfortably in balanced market territory. But the real ironic part about this is that we continue to hear this narrative that the Bank of Canada will start dropping interest rates very soon, maybe as early as the spring, maybe early summer. They have rate announcements on April the 10th, June the 5th, and July the 24th. And if it's not these, then definitely by the end of the year. And a lot of this is coming from folks in the real estate industry cheering this on. And when it comes to their bottom line, rightfully so. But these are the same folks that are now cheering on how hot the market is and how prices are roaring up again. Well, unfortunately, we can't have our cake and eat it too. If you're cheering for rates to drop, the last thing you want is for prices to be surging right now. Because if we see 4 to 5 straight months of 2% price growth, not only could we see rates not fall, but, well, I don't even want to say it. All right, that's it for me for this month. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you right back here in about a month's time. Take care, everyone.